In this video, I will describe the difference between a calculated data item and an aggregated measure. We will look at example expressions and see how we can use these in a SAS Visual Analytics report to answer business questions. I will first give a definition of a calculated data item versus aggregated measure, and then move into two demonstrations. The first will be of a calculated data item, and the second for an aggregated measure. And then I'll talk about how to determine which to use via examples and give you additional resources. Here are some basic definitions for a calculated data item and aggregated measure. For a calculated data item, the expression is evaluated for each row of unaggregated data. That means the expression will be evaluated for each observation in the source data before aggregations are performed. For an aggregated measure, the expression is evaluated on aggregated data. Aggregations are evaluated by context, which is based on the object's role assignments. There are two contexts that can be used when defining an aggregated measure expression. By group, which calculates the aggregation for each subset of the data item, or for all, which calculates aggregation for the entire data item after filtering. I will be using the Megacorp data for my examples. It has 19 facilities that manufacture toys across 4 product lines: action figure, game, promotional, and stuffed animal. We have the measures unit yield actual and unit yield target in our data. Two of the questions I will use to drive today's examples are: 1. Are the facilities meeting their unit yield targets? And 2. What is the daily unit yield rate? To answer the question, are the facilities meeting their unit yield targets, we will find the difference between the measures unit yield actual and unit yield target. As you can see, we have a simple expression using the subtraction operator. What we can take away is that the closer the unit yield difference is to 0, then we know that the facility is meeting their target. Recall that this expression will be calculated for every row observation in the data source, and it'll use the SAS Visual Analytics default aggregation behavior. Let's jump into the first demonstration for the calculated data item. Recall from the earlier slide a few profile points about the Megacorp data. Looking at this first list table, we can see the 4 product lines and the distinct count of the number of products in each product line. Down below, we have the crosstab object. And here we can see how the different products are distributed across facility, facility state, and facility regions. And finally, in this list table, we can see that we have the date, which is aggregated to the day level. We have unit yield actual and unit yield target. So the first business question we want to answer is, are the facilities meeting their unit yield targets? We can see that I am starting off with the same list table that I had on the first page. Again, date, unit yield actual, and unit yield target. Now we need to build the calculated data item unit yield difference. Remember, we want the unit yield difference to equal unit yield actual minus unit yield target. To do that, I'm going to work with the data pane and the new data item menu and select calculated item. Now I want to build the formula. Using the operators tab, I will expand the numeric simple grouping and double-click to add the subtraction operator. Next, from the data items, I will use the search for yield, and we want to build the expression where unit yield actual minus unit yield target. Now let's go ahead and give this a name. We're going to call it unit yield difference. We're going to leave the result type as automatic numeric, and for the format, we will go ahead and reduce the decimal precision down to 0 and click OK. Click OK to create our calculated data item, and we can see that it is grouped with the other measures in the data source. Hovering over it, we can also see that this is the expression we built, unit yield actual minus unit yield target. Let's go ahead and add it to our list table. Here you can see, using the date column, that we are aggregated at the day level. And we can see by day using the unit yield difference if we met our target. If the difference is negative, then that means we did not meet our target and that the actual unit yield value was shy of our target. As I mentioned, this is aggregated to the day. So in this object, we would say the by group context is determined by the roles assigned, and in this example, date. The category data items are the ones to drive the by group context. The list table is a special object that we have the option to expand and see the underlying detailed data. So using the options pane, with the list table active, I will go down and select to view detailed data. Now we can see that for every row in the data source, we have a value for unit yield actual, target, and our unit yield difference, our calculated data item. This is a lot of information. We can see when I use the scroll bar that the maximum value of returned rows for the list table, 40,000, is being met. We have more than 40,000 rows in our data source, but that's the limitation of aggregate data rows that the list table will show. Let's go ahead and just isolate one day of data so we can get a better look at what our calculated data item is doing. Using the filters pane, I will select add a new advanced filter. I will expand the date in the data items pane and select date. And I want to only look at January 1st, 2011. So I will use the drop down to select January 1st and then 2011. We can see out of the total observations in my data source, over 1.5 million, I have a returned row observation of 339. Let's go ahead and click OK. As this filter is applied to this list table, using the scroll bar, I can see that I have the 339 rows returned just for January 1st, 2011. We can see that it appears as if we have duplicate data rows, but I know that each row represents a different product ID. So in order to see the most granular level of these individual rows, let's go ahead and add product ID to our role assignment. So now we can see easily that for each row in our data, I do not have duplicate values for product ID, and we can see we have valid values for our unit yield difference. Let's go ahead and turn on totals. Using the options pane, down at the very bottom, we can turn on totals for the list table. I'm going to select all of our available measures and customize the total row for ease of readability. Now we can easily see for that each row in our data source, we still have a valid value for unit yield difference, and that the default Visual Analytics aggregation of sum is producing an accurate result. Now for this object, we have changed our by group context. It is now date by product ID, which is driven by the category data items assigned to the roles. I want to reinforce how important two things are. One, letting Visual Analytics do the aggregation work for you. And we can see more information about that here in our data pane. When I expand our calculated data item unit yield difference, we see our expression listed right here in the properties, but we can also see the aggregation type, which is sum. Number two, this gives us a lot of flexibility to provide different metrics to assist in answering our business questions. For example, if I change the aggregation type to average, then we could answer the question, what is the average unit yield difference per day? Now we can see at the row level, the unit yield difference value is not changing. It's just at the aggregation. This is because right now we're looking at detailed data for this list table. And down at the bottom, we can see that the label changed from sum to average. And now we have for January 1st, 2011, the average daily unit yield difference is by 18 units. Let's toggle back the aggregation to sum and duplicate this list table. We'll go ahead and push it over to the side. Let's see how these values match up with a different by group context. So for our new list table, let's go ahead and remove product ID and turn off the detailed data. As we can see, SAS Visual Analytics for this list table has now aggregated all of the rows to our new by group context, which is per day. So now for January 1st, because we still have the filter looking at only January 1st, 2011, we can see that we're getting the same total results because it's aggregating correctly. Let me minimize this. So we can see that for unit yield actual, we have 14,000, our target is 20,000, and our unit yield difference is the 6,000 units. Quickly toggling back to the unit yield difference average, we can see even without all of the detailed rows being visible, we still get the correct unit yield difference, the average aggregation when we change it using the data pane options. Let's go ahead and remove the day filter from both of our list tables. So using the filters pane, I'll just delete that and minimize this. Using the other list table, I will delete our day filter. I'm going to make sure we have our sort so we can see the first days up at the top. So we're still looking at the detailed data for this list table, and we can see the sums and the average right now down below, which match as expected because SAS Visual Analytics is doing the aggregation. Instead of the day detailed level, we are now summed up to and aggregated to the day level. And we can see how we get the correct aggregation for our unit yield difference. And that is for every day. So our unit yield difference per day is we're shy about 7 units on average. Going back to our sum aggregation, we can see again we get the same results, and that actually for the entire year of 2011 we are shy of 3.5 million units. Now we have to answer the question we came in with. Are the facilities meeting their unit yield targets? So now let's go ahead and change from the day by group context to facility. Selecting our list table, instead of the date, we are going to select facility. We have 19 facilities, and now we can see per facility what our unit yield difference is. If we sort on unit yield difference, we can see which facilities are meeting the target. Right now, we only have one facility, the New York facility number 90, is actually meeting their target as we have a unit yield difference of 0. And now we can see which facilities are the furthest from meeting their targets as we go down in the sort order. But let's say we wanted to get additional information. We could even add product line into the visual. To do that though, I'm going to use a different object so we can further explore how we can use the default SAS Visual Analytics aggregation on a calculated data item. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this list table. I'm going to add in a crosstab. And for the rows, I'm going to add facility and product line. For the measure, I'm going to select our calculated data item unit yield difference. And now we're letting SAS Visual Analytics do all of the aggregation for us. I'll go ahead and turn on total so we can verify that we're getting the correct answers. Down at the bottom, I'll turn on totals. I will format our total line so that we can read it easily and place it after. So here we can see our unit yield different values are matching. But let's say our requirement for determining if a facility is close enough to meeting their target, we're going to say anything within 500 units of meeting the target is acceptable. So a nice way that we can display that is on the crosstab, we can add a display rule. So using the rules pane, I will create a new rule for the unit yield difference. I'll go ahead and give it a label. I will use the interval operator, And the minimum can be 500 units shy, and then max will just say 500 units over. And we'll go ahead and color those as acceptable in green. So now we can see which facilities by product line. So if these facilities were not broken down by product line, then obviously this number would not meet that particular rule. But in this example, if we're looking at facilities by product line and if the unit yield targets are being met, then we easily have our answer. I'll go ahead and collapse that pane so we can see it a little better. Again, the power of the calculated data item is that you can accurately leverage the SAS Visual Analytics default aggregation in all of the SAS Visual Analytic objects. Now let's move on to the aggregated measure example. One of the ways to determine if you need to use an aggregated measure is if you are dealing with an expression that requires multiple passes through the data to get the correct value, such as ratios. In this example, to answer the question, what is the daily unit yield rate, we will need to build an expression that first sums the by-group context for unit yield actual, then divided by the sum of the by-group context for unit yield target. Recall that this expression will first aggregate the data based on the definition by the defined context, then evaluate the expression. There is no default Visual Analytics aggregation happening. The aggregated measure expression defines how the measure will be aggregated when used in SAS Visual Analytic objects. Let's go ahead and look at the demonstration for aggregated measures. Here we're going to move on to our second page. What is the unit yield rate? We are starting with the SAM list table, looking at the data by day for unit yield actual and unit yield target. Let's go ahead and build our aggregated measure. The steps to start are the same as we did in the calculated data item. Using the data pane, we're going to use the new data item menu and select calculated item. Now we want to build the formula. The first thing I'm going to do is from the operators tab, expand the numeric simple and add the ratio operator. This is where we define part of the aggregation for the aggregated measure, as we have to tell it how we want to aggregate our data. We are going to expand the aggregated simple operators, and remember, we want to sum the numerator divided by the sum of the denominator. Our context is going to be left by group for both numerator and denominator. Now we need to add in our data items. Let's go ahead and search. And we're going to say the sum by group of unit yield actual divided by the sum by group of unit yield target. Let's go ahead and give this a name. We're going to leave the result type of the automatic aggregated measure, but we're going to change this to a % format. Let's go ahead and click OK. And we can see our new aggregated measure is down here in the aggregated measure grouping. Hovering over it, we can see that our expression is exactly what we defined, sum by group of unit yield actual divided by sum by group unit yield target. Let's go ahead and add our aggregated measure to the list table and turn on totals. So using the role assignment, I'll go ahead and add our aggregated measure and turn on totals, which is down at the bottom. Format our total line and fix our sort because I accidentally sorted it. Now at first glance, we can see that the unit yield rates are looking accurate. For the most part, 14,000 divided by 20,000 is giving us a 70% unit yield rate. But for easier readability, let's go ahead and look at the detailed data again. So using our options, we will scroll up in our list table and select View Detailed Data. We can see that these smaller numbers make it a little bit easier to verify we are getting the accurate unit yield rate. Remember, our by group context right now is at the individual day, detailed day level. Let's go ahead and change the context to be month and verify we're getting the same result for unit yield rate. Go ahead and duplicate our list table. Move it over. we are going to change date to be date by month, and we're going to turn off detailed data. So now this list table is aggregated. The by group context is date by month. And we can see our unit yield rate down in the total lines are the same. We can also see that individually the aggregations of unit yield actual divided by unit yield target are producing correct values for unit yield rate. You may still be skeptical or not fully appreciate the usefulness and need for aggregated measures. One easy way for me to demonstrate this is to compare its behavior to a similar expression for a regular calculated data item. In the data pane, let's go ahead and expand our aggregated measure unit yield rate. We already saw and verified our expression when I did the hover over, but notice that the only thing we can select here is the format. We do not have the aggregation type available, and that is because the aggregated measure is defining how to aggregate those data rows. I have already created a similar calculated data item representing the rate, but without the aggregation context. So here we can see in the unit yield rate data item, I called it a data item because I've taken out the aggregation and its context. So now we just have the basic expression unit yield actual divided by unit yield target. Here we can see similar format, but now we have an aggregation context for Visual Analytics, and it is telling it to sum all of these calculations. Let's go ahead and add it to both of our list tables. So since this list table is active, I will go ahead and add in the regular unit yield rate, which is a data item. I'll go ahead and minimize this so we can see all of our columns. And this is where the need for the aggregated measure is made clear. Let's first look at our detailed list table that is looking at all of the rows in our data source. We can see at the detailed row by row, the calculated data item and aggregated measure, they're giving the same results. But looking at our total line, we can see that SAS Visual Analytics even labels it differently. So the default aggregation or the defined aggregation type for all of our metrics right here are sum. We have the sum of actual, target, and here we have the sum of our unit yield rate, which is not correct. For our aggregated measure, we can see it's using the word total for the label, which is giving us the correct answer. So the aggregation that is happening is not a sum, but it's actually using the aggregation defined in the expression, where it's taking the sum by group of actual divided by the sum by group for target and returning that value. Taking a look at the date by month aggregated list table, we can see when it tries to aggregate the regular calculated data item for a ratio that the default aggregation type sum is happening and returning the sum for all the values of the rows for January 2011 and returning that value. Where for unit yield rate, it's taking the sum by group of actual, this 2.1 million divided by the 2.3 million for target, and returning the expression for unit yield rate accurately. You would see the same issues if you had ratio results stored in the data source. So I do have, Megacorp does come with a rate stored at the detailed level. I'll go ahead and add that. And we can see it behaves just very similar to our calculated data item. Now, one thing you could do if this is how your data is stored is you could leverage a different aggregation type to try to get a more accurate result. So in our data source, instead of using the default sum, if we changed the aggregation type to average, we would get a similar or closer to the actual value here. Now we can see that it's not 100% because the number of rows for each of the different months may not pan out to give us exactly the values where if we summed the unit actual divided by target. But if that's what you have to work with, if you don't actually have the source numerator and denominator that you can build an aggregated measure, then be sure to change your aggregation type for any of those ratios. So our question, what is the daily unit yield rate? Let's go ahead and change the role assignment from date by month back to the day level. Go ahead and remove the incorrect values. And now we have our daily unit yield rate. This example only makes use of the context by group. Let's look to see if we can find another example using the for all context. Let's have a discussion about quick calculations. Quick calculations are SAS Visual Analytics' easy button to create aggregated measures. So it's a one-click calculation where when you right-click on any category or measure data item in the data pane, select New Calculation. From the available calculations, SAS Visual Analytics will automatically generate the aggregated measure expression for you. In this table, you can see the available category quick calculations, as well as the available measure quick calculations. You will only see the periodic expressions if you have a date or date time available in your data source. And the periodic expressions include the ones such as previous parallel period, period to date, or year to date. Let's go ahead and check out another example using aggregated measures, but with quick calculations. We are going to be using our third page, starting with similar data in our list table. Here we're aggregated to the day level, but we are only going to be looking at unit yield actual for our quick calculations. Let's go ahead and create two new quick calculations. So back to our data pane, we are going to find unit yield actual and right click and select New Calculation. The first one we are going to select happens to be at the top. We're going to select Cumulative Total and click OK. And then we're going to create a second. So right click on Unit Yield Actual, select a new calculation, and we're going to select Percent of Total Sum. And click OK. We can see that those aggregated measures have been built for us and added down below in the aggregated measure grouping. Let's go ahead and add these to our list table and turn on totals. We're going to select unit yield actual for cumulative total and unit yield actual percent of total. Let's go ahead and turn on totals for all of our measures. Format the total line. And we can see already SAS Visual Analytics is treating these aggregated measures properly. We can see that by the label total in front of it instead of the aggregation type of sum. Let's take a look at the expressions. First up is the cumulative total. So let's go ahead and right click and edit. Go ahead and switch to our operators tab. In this expression, we can see the quick calculation is using the aggregate cells operator. I happen to know that aggregate cells operator is under our most advanced aggregated operator under the tabular grouping. This is an advanced expression. Let's take a look at what it's doing. It is choosing how to aggregate the data. In this selection, we have chosen to sum the rows. Here is the measure that we're going to be summing. And this is actually our by group context. And I know we looked at that there's a by group or for all. And this aggregation context for the more advanced operators, they can be a little bit different. So here we could aggregate the cells instead of by group, but only for the columns going up and down, the rows going across. Temporal is by date, or just using the default context is fine. We're going to start at the first row in our object and stop summing unit yield actual when we get to our current row. Here, if we wanted to do current row -1, you could do that, current row +1. You can make those adjustments here. So let's go ahead and see how this works. So for our first row, for the cumulative total, it's starting at the first row and starting at the first row until we get to the current. Obviously, there's only one row, nothing to add. When we get to the second row, it's starting at the first and add until we get the current. So here we have the 100,000. Third row, it's going to start at the first row and sum until we get to our current row. And that is how the cumulative total works in this aggregated measure. Let's take a look at the percent of total. The percent of total is pretty straightforward. We know it's taking the unit yield actual by group, dividing by the total sum. So we get that the January 1st, 2011 is 0.05% of the 100% total. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. In our aggregated measure grouping, when I right-click on the percent of total, I don't have an edit. When I use the hover over, I'm also not getting it. And that is because for some of the quick calculations in SAS Visual Analytics, it doesn't give you the expression that you can edit. And the reason why we don't have the expression that we can edit for some of these measures is because SAS Visual Analytics gives us some measures out of the box. Frequency percent, percent of total, those are things that it automatically calculates for us and provides for every data source. But since we're interested in the for all context group, let's go ahead and build out the percent of total so we can take a look at it. So using our new data item menu, we'll select calculated item. From the operators, this is a ratio again. So we're going to add our ratio. And then for our aggregation, this is a sum expression for the numerator, and our context is by group. And then we're going to sum our denominator rows, but that context is going to be for all. So in our data item, we're interested in unit yield actual. And we're going to take the sum by group of unit yield actual divided by the total. Let's go ahead and give this a name, leave the automatic aggregated measure, and then change our format. Let's go ahead and click OK. Now down at the bottom of the aggregated measure grouping, when we hover over our percent of total, we can see the expression we defined. Let's go ahead and add it to our list table. I'll deselect that first row from the roles pane. Let's go ahead and add it. So we're getting the same values here, and now we know that the percent of total is using both the by group and the for all context. Let's go ahead and change the by group context to be facility, which gives us a more meaningful number for the percent of total. Let's go ahead and sort these values, where we can see the highest contribution for unit yield is coming from our Alabama 41 facility with 26.51% of the total. Now the big question, when do you use a calculated data item versus an aggregated measure? And I hope these examples have helped you understand which one to build when the time comes for it. So use a calculated data item when it needs to return a value for every row observation in your data source. Also, the expression is valid when using the SAS Visual Analytics default aggregation types for all of the Visual Analytics objects. Some examples of expressions where every row would need a value could be a character expression. So I know I didn't cover it in this particular recording, but if you were concatenating first name and last name to get the full name, so every row would have a value for that. That one particularly would not be aggregated. Age would also, but using age as a individual row observation, you could change it to show the average age and have that aggregate as potential to help answer your business questions. And when would you use an aggregated measure? So if the default aggregation for an expression returns incorrect values, that would be an indication you may need to build out an aggregated measure. if the expression definition requires multiple passes through the data, if you need to use an advanced aggregated operator, your expression requires an aggregation context either by group or for all. And then a few examples. One we looked at was a ratio, so the percent of total, where you have the sum by group divided by the sum for all. Those periodic, which we didn't look at in this demonstration. And then the tabular operators, which we did look at for the aggregate cells for the cumulative total. For more information, please refer to the SAS Visual Analytics documentation or check out one of these videos or blogs. Thank you, and check back with the Technical Insights and Expertise series for additional tips.